got a lot of ads. We're a popular station. There's ads everywhere. Let's begin, of course, this conversation on the Nigerian economy with oil, the lifeblood of the nation. There it is, $64.94 Brent, which is well below Nigeria's benchmark of $75. What does it mean? What can Nigeria do as an oil-producing nation? Who better to answer that question? Amaka Anku, head of Africa for the Eurasia Group. Happy to have her in the studio again. Amaka, good to see you again. Good morning.
Same here. Good to see you.
Welcome,
Thanks for having me.
Yes, indeed. Welcome. So, I mean, what's your... I usually ask you this question at the end, right? Your outlook for the economy. But I want to start with that since oil is where it is. Yeah, how do you see the economy being impacted with oil prices where they are?
Yeah, look, with Nigeria, you always have to have a concern about oil. But I am not as concerned. I think that, as I could be.
Yeah.
So I think over the last few years, Nigeria has become a lot less dependent on oil, right? So there are three reasons I would say why I'm less concerned now. One is if you look at the fiscal books, revenue for the federal government over the last few years, oil hasn't been a big chunk of revenue, right? That has changed. That had changed, frankly, has been changing since 2015, but definitely after the COVID shock, right? In 2021, it was like really low, but so because it's been such a small portion of revenue, there is still room for it to grow. Right?
Okay.
Because of the removal of the subsidy.
Right.
So we know the subsidy was removed in October. We know that NNPC had gotten itself into a lot of arrears, and they're still paying off arrears. So there's still room for them to increase remittance to the federal government from profit oil. Yeah. So the only thing the federal government had been getting was from royalties and petroleum profit taxes and blah, blah, blah.
Gotcha.
Now, the other reason, though, is before you move on, is that if you look at the numbers, a lot of Nigerian independents had taken over wells that IOCs were not producing from. Right. And if you look at the numbers from Q1, they're doing really well. They're increasing production, right? A part of that is that they can operate at a much lower cost structure than the IOCs were. So if you have these they're not marginal, they're wells that had been used for a long time. It was a lot more expensive to produce from them.
Right.
If you're a smaller company, you have better relations in the community, you're using Nigerian suppliers, you can, in some places, double production. So with lower oil prices, but potentially production increasing, even if it's by 100 or 200,000 barrels, it can help offset some of that.
Right. Okay. So solid. Now, the dollar has, we're looking at U.S. futures early in the morning. The dollar is weakening. Treasury yields are going up. Does that mitigate concerns with the currency? Because there's been some worries. Yeah. So what do you make of that as far as the weakening of the dollar? Does that help us out? Yeah, to some extent.
We have seen that the Naira has been under more pressure.
Yeah.
I would, since April or so, since
Liberation Day.
Since Liberation Day.
Liberation Day.
Compared to previously.
Yeah.
It helps that the dollar is weakening. But I also have the same look. I think the impact on FX supply might be a little bit more than on the fiscal, just because there was just very little revenue from oil. But I also think that there are ways that could be mitigated. Again, similar to the oil analysis I did, which is if you look at the fact that the central bank has had to retire a lot of swaps, but still somehow managed to grow. I shouldn't say somehow, but still managed to grow reserves. They're paying a lot of money for all the FPI flows. It might not be. It hopefully will not be as bad as it could be. Yeah.
So beyond Nigeria, you've given us the background there. Nigeria is relying less on oil and so on. But for the Libyas, the Saudi Arabians, and everybody else, if you're an oil-producing nation that is worried about where the prices are, what do you do? Do you sell assets? Do you borrow more? Well, what do you think?
I think the analysis applies to Nigeria too.
Yeah.
Because it will be different for all of them. I think for Nigeria, you have to raise more revenue from non-oil sources. Okay.
Yeah.
Nigeria has done a poor job of that, in part because it was complacent because of oil for many years. I know that there has been efforts from the current administration to improve revenue collection and to centralize things to reduce leakages. If you have 5 different people collecting and there's leakage everywhere, if you centralize it, even if there's still leakage, you're going to reduce the overall leakage.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think doing things like that need to do that. You need to raise more revenue, and there's always room to cut waste. I think Nigeria, you know how I feel about this. I think Nigeria just doesn't spend that much, period.
Yeah.
There's always going to be waste everywhere in the world, but there's always room to cut that.
Yeah.
I just think that has to be very narrowly focused on fat, because we need to raise expenditure on every other critical service.
Yeah, healthcare, I mean,
education, agriculture.
Exactly.
If you want to improve productivity in agriculture, you have to spend more on building rural roads, on facilitating, storage, on improving extension services, all those things that will improve productivity.
It costs money. What do you make of the latest, looks like inflation decelerating, what was it, 27.1 or so for April? What do you make of the inflation? Is that,
Look, I think, as we know, the inflation numbers, the backdrop of how we got here is uncertain.
Right.
Fine, so we start with that. But I think the trend is clear.
Yeah.
The trend has been downward, and people feel it.
Yeah.
So many times in Nigeria, numbers are coming down, but people don't feel it in their pockets. But now, people actually feel like prices are coming down, especially with food prices. So that's a good thing. I think the trend is in the right direction.
Gotcha. Power. We were just, you travel a lot. You know what it's like to have 24/7 power. We just came from Abidjan, a tiny little, Côte d'Ivoire. They've got 24/7 power, at least in Abidjan anyway. The Minister of Power here in Nigeria says that the government is committed to paying off this 4 trillion naira debts to the Gencos. Now, of course, this debt didn't start with this administration. It's piling up. I think I've asked you this. What's your thoughts on where we are with power and how important it is to?
No, I think it's critical.
Yeah.
I think reducing the cost of business, especially the things that are required for manufacturing, makes it easier for people to manufacture and create jobs.
Yeah.
And power is a big part of that, right? Reliability, costs. Look, I think that the efforts to people, Nigerians are not going to like it because we say we want power, but we don't want to pay more for it.
Right.
So the efforts to raise prices is a part of it. And that has been ongoing. And I think that that's one of the things that I've heard the administration wants to focus on, right? Is raising prices. So we have to accept that we need to hold the government accountable for providing what they say they're going to provide, but we also need to be willing to pay.
Right, for it. To what degree is unstable electricity holding Nigeria back? It's huge.
Yeah, I think it is one of the big critical factors. I wouldn't say it's the only thing.
Yeah.
I think productivity in the agricultural sector is more important for me because if you look at the number of people in Nigeria that are involved in or employed by the agricultural sector, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of population.
Right.
If you can find a way to improve productivity, you will impact a lot more people. A lot more people are subsistence farmers, get more money in their pockets, which means they can afford more and create more demand for manufactured products.
Right. Gotcha.
Right? And you can grow your economy.
Move from there. I want to ask you about jobs, particularly, so again, with reference to the Africa CEO Forum in Abidjan, we spoke with Uzoma Dozie, CEO of digital bank Sparkle. I asked him about 3MTT. I want to ask you the same thing because I want to tie it to your thoughts on creating jobs for the youth. You talked about agriculture, but about tech. So I just want to play a clip. He said that, he basically said that it needs private participation, that the Dr. Bosun Tijani's ministry can't just do it by itself. So here's that clip.
And in fact, I think we have, at Sparkle, I think we just gotten somebody who's going to actually, from that 3MTT, who's going to be working with us from a data perspective, and a woman as well, so that fits into our gender diversity program.
Okay.
But it's like in Nigeria, scale is always a problem. So it's the quality and the consistency of the resources that is available. I think the last time I heard is that there's going to be more private sector participation. I think initially it was just going to be the ministry trying to do it by themselves. I think that's difficult. You have to have participation. I think it's a great initiative, and in fact, I think we have a Sparkle.
The whole concept of what do you think of 3MTT? What do you think of actually just jobs? They want to train 3 million software producers in Nigeria, and but he, like he said, it's great, but
Yeah.
I mean, who's going to absorb them, right? So, but then my question to you was really about jobs, just creating jobs for youth, since we got so many.
No, I mean, I think it's a great idea. People have talked about data centers.
Right.
Nigerians speak better English than a lot of people, and a lot of places where we have data centers.
Yeah.
And so I think it is something that the government also needs to be actively leaning into. Training software engineers. I mean, we know where the world is going, how important technology is, how important AI is. And that is something that you're going to need a lot of people, right? Like, mining data for AI takes a lot of time.
Right.
And so I think you can't go wrong by training people to be, literate in the future.
But what about jobs in general? Just creating enough demand to create more jobs, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the way you're going to create jobs, I think, has to be by producing more products to sell to the outside world. Right? So again, you start with the agriculture sector because there's so many people involved.
Right.
And you start by again, making it a lot easier to export, cutting tape, centralizing things so that if there's 5 people with discretion, make it 1 person with discretion. If 1 person is going to harass you, it's better than 5 people harassing you.
Right.
You get what I mean. And making it a lot easier for people to export, and then supporting the things that are necessary for exports, like the infrastructure, like storage, right? And that's the way. And then outside of the agriculture sector, same in ICT, tech. Create the enabling environment, which is about skills. It's about electricity, right? It's about infrastructure. All of that needs money.
Right.
We get back to revenue.
It all comes full circle.
And why exactly?
It all comes full
circle. So yeah.
We want to run off a little pop quiz for you. Not really a pop quiz because it's really your thoughts. But I just had to find a different way of asking you for your outlook. So there we are. Nigeria's economy in 2025. Amaka Anku, is it A, treading water? Is it B, on the road to recovery? C, booming? Or D, sinking like the Titanic? I don't know. I hope people...
This is a trick question. Easy. B, on the road to recovery.
On the road to recovery.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think if you look at the numbers from last year, the numbers were better. Than the previous year. And if you look at the last 10 years, it's one of the best numbers outside of the COVID rebound. Since 2015, right? Still nowhere near where Nigeria needs to be to grow and to cover the fact that Nigeria's fertility rate is over 3%, right? Like you have to be growing. So on the road to recovery. And I think that there's a lot of reasons for me to be optimistic, including, we didn't talk about Dangote's refinery, but I think that's a huge factor in terms of creating jobs. Because one of the things that we need, if you think about the manufacturing sector, if you can, there's a lot of some of the down products from Dangote's refinery. A lot of Nigeria's manufacturing is like plastics, right? Low complexity things. If you can de-risk it from currency trends, and they can buy from Dangote.
And you just,
right? The naira is so cheap right now. You can go and sell literally across the board and make so much more naira. This is the time with a competitive naira for the manufacturing sector to lean into some of these opportunities. So I think even without that, I think that even if you take out the fact that now you've taken out NMPC, this one extremely inefficient, extremely corrupt company that wasn't really sticking to its mandates, was busy doing all these other things. Now you take them out, now you can have a bunch of different private sector petroleum marketers who have to compete for market share. Because before, NMPC would bring in all this products and then assign it to people based on God knows what. Sorry for any... Who knows how they were assigning it? You know what I mean? Like you're selling it to whoever you want, your friends, whatever. But now you have private marketers who have to compete for share, right? So even that alone, they need financing, they need logistics. That alone can be stimulating to the economy.
So road to recovery, option B. Amaka Anku, head of Africa at the Eurasia Group. Always a pleasure having you on here to talk African matters. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.